that light enough?
Yeah, we're good.
Let me see if I can do this.
We are good in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Are you there? Are you tuned in to us? Welcome to the Karla Dawn Live Show here on Facebook Live. I'm here with a guest who's going to really give you a lot of important information about sexual law and sexual harassment situations we'll discuss, but more particularly sexual discrimination. So I have Brenda Feigen here with me, who's an attorney in the Los Angeles area. Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad that you took a little time for me today to talk about this important issue. You know, too many people are discriminated upon, you know, and they really shouldn't in many ways, but especially, sexually. You shouldn't, based on your sex, have any kind of discrimination there. And today we see, you know, more people speaking out, so many more, you know, action being taken against people like that, and people accepting.
That's exactly
you know, and that's really what has to happen. And then in addition, we have sexual harassment going on for a multitude of reasons. And it's just, and sexual assault, that takes to another level.
Absolutely.
You know, and, you know, straight to jail, like Bill Cosby.
That's right.
No questions. Just now at this point, we know it happened. Get there. So let me know a little bit about you. Let's share with the audience. I want to help them understand when they are discriminated upon, what action they can take. Right. We'll talk about things like that, how we can help them seek help, when to recognize signs even, and is it okay to speak up? And don't be fearful of losing your job over this. So many things. So you're in for a great show, 30 minutes of your time. It will be well worth it. So let us know a little bit about you and your background.
All right. I went to Harvard Law School, and in the 60s, the late 60s, and I was treated with a great deal of discrimination. Mm-hmm. I just want to say that.
Excuse me 1 second. Let me get this on. I'm realizing we don't have these on.
That's right.
We need this so they can hear you. Excuse me, everybody. I was having fun playing with the doggy, so I forgot. Truman was preoccupying me, and so I just forgot to put our clips on.
Well, I'll start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I went to Harvard Law School. I graduated in 1969.
Okay.
When I was there, my eyes were open to fierce sex discrimination. There were 32 women in a class of 565, which was 6%. They treated us like a outcast, called on women on what they called ladies' days. In criminal law, it was the one day of the year we talked about rape and what constitutes rape, which we can get into. And when I was in a constitutional law class, and the most eminent professor of constitutional law decided to make a joke out of a case that the Supreme Court ruled on, saying that a Michigan law that required barmaids to have their husbands or fathers present in the bar when they were working, and the court thought that was fine. I erupted in anger, and that was really the beginning of a long life as a feminist.
Oh wow!
And after Harvard, I should also say that Justice Ginsburg, now starring in a documentary called RBG that I'm in, that just came out in theaters. Justice Ginsburg was there and left Harvard in 1959, and describe the same kind of discrimination in the documentary that I'm talking about.
Oh, that's going to be wonderful. Do you know when that's coming out?
It's out now. It came out on May 4th, and it's in theaters all over.
Oh, everybody should go check that out.
Yeah, really, it's what it tells you all about Justice Ginsburg, notorious RBG, and I'm very proud to have been in that. And the reason I was in that is that I was asked in 1972. I was asked toward the end of '71 to run the Women's Rights Project of the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, with her. So we worked on sex discrimination cases, and that's what I can tell you a lot about getting.
That's your expert area. Right.
Yeah, I mean the case that was the most interesting to me was the first one we handled, which was called Frontiero against Richardson, and it was the case of a female Air Force officer whose husband was not totally dependent on her for his support. And male officers' wives were automatically given benefits, but he wasn't. Other male spouses weren't, because they figured that men are the breadwinners and women aren't. And so we brought this case to the Supreme Court, and Justice Ginsburg, then Professor Ginsburg, was just brilliant in her oral argument that was based on a brief that I had written with her, that just laid to rest any question about how bad sex discrimination is in society, how horribly hard it was for women in this country. For example, 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton in Seneca Falls wrote and read the Declaration of Sentiments, in which she talked about how women were degraded and just confined to the sphere of the home. And it wasn't until 1920 when women got the vote in America. And the fact that you can imagine petitioning for support when you don't even have the vote was really quite shocking. And one of the most interesting things about that story is that there was a fight among the women suffragists who wanted suffrage and the black activists, I'm calling them activists, they weren't called that then, but who wanted to get over slavery and the Civil War, and they were pushing for black males to get the vote ahead of all women. And there was a fuss between those two factions. So it took from 1872, I think, when they got the vote, to 1920 when women got the vote. And women, I mean, so we have sort of accepted our second place status in life, and I can't do that anymore, and I don't think very many can.
It's gone on much too long.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just sad that it even started that way. I understand women, take care of the family for the most part. We give birth, and we take care of kids,
and
we do
work,
that.
And we do
and we have to work. We're super women.
Exactly.
We're expected to do it all, but then do it for less.
And
not get the rewards and not get paid for that. Just kind of do it.
Certainly not get paid equally, which is
not paid
a big part.
I know Nate Holden, a former state senator of California, was really active in creating laws to help women get better pay.
Well, there's a movement finally in Hollywood, not only what you were talking about earlier, which is the Me Too and Time's Up movements, which I can talk more about, but also just the whole issue of even female stars getting paid, half what they're. I mean, talk about London. You mentioned you have some friends.
We have viewers that are in London.
Okay, viewers in London. Well, in The Crown, it was discovered that Claire Foy was paid half as much as Matt Smith, and he was playing, Prince Philip and she the Queen.
Exactly.
So, anyway, that's just a silly example.
That was definitely a situation to say, this is the Queen.
Right. That's right.
The main, cast member.
So female.
It's been going on and on.
Getting, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Mark Wahlberg was recently had gotten a lot more pay than
$1 million
actor.
to her.
Yeah, 80 something ridiculous.
$80 a day. That's exactly.
Yeah, it just is too much, and I'm just so glad that across the board, people are now speaking out on not accepting certain things that they know are wrong instead of just tolerance. We've been living in too much tolerance, and I think it's a better world for you to see this change.
The whole Time's Up, which is a sort of a movement that sprung out of the Me Too, where women are chiming in saying, I too have been sexually harassed. Time's Up is about sexual harassment. And it's important because there are lawyers now, I'm one of them, who are volunteering to take cases that involve women who are not in Hollywood but all over everywhere, and one of them has just made the papers today.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Yeah, I know Gloria Allred seems to be the go-to, but there are many great attorneys out there that can take on these cases.
That's right. Excuse me.
And quite often, I think it's good for people to look at other situations because she can get on overload probably.
Well,
too.
it's also true that I, for example, my focus has been more on sex discrimination, and I think hers has been more on harassment, and she represents a lot of victims of sexual harassment, and that's tricky because you have to file a claim. I should reflect either with the State Department of Fair Employment and Housing or with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission within a very limited time after the incident occurs.
So statute of limitations is still in existence?
Absolutely. The only area where there's been talk about eliminating the statute of limitations is actual rape. But when you talk about sexual harassment, you have a year to file with the State Department, and if you're in the general United States, 180 days to 6 months. That's it.
Okay. I'm glad you said, because a lot of people feel with what we're seeing on TV, why are people coming out the woodworks 20 years later?
A lot of it is publicity. But to publicize the, and Allred is very good at that, but the bottom line is these cases really have to be brought on time, and women have to muster their courage to complain. And obviously, if you're complaining about a sexual harassment situation, it's really important to get as many people as possible to complain about the same person or persons who are committing this, so you can get rid of them.
Power in numbers.
Yes. Now, a lot of the people that left the men who were thrown out of their jobs were not sued or claimed against in agencies or courts, they were embarrassed out of and the companies that they were working for threw them out.
Right.
And that's great. I mean,
so is that the benefit to making it public, even though
yes,
you might, the statute
absolutely.
of limitations is up, but
Absolutely.
you can still talk about it.
Oh my gosh.
Especially with social media.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly right.
Because you have to get your vindication, I guess, in a way, or your
you have to speak up for
resolve
yourself
some kind of way.
Yeah, you just have to speak up for yourself and realize that it's your right to work or exist in a place that is free of harassment and free of discrimination.
Right.
And a lot of women put up with a lot.
They do. It's a lot.
I mean, waitresses, flight
Oh,
attendants, who are not all women, but really, it's very. There's some industries that are just.
Can you explain some of the actions of a person, mostly men, but there are women as well that can be the person committing the crime. But what are some of those actions that warrant being sexual discrimination and then sexual harassment?
Well, let me clarify something. We're not talking about crimes right now. If we are talking about crimes, and usually we're not, then we get to rape. And on the subject of rape, if somebody has been raped, or if there has been a sexual act that is not consensual, there are much more lenient statutes of limitation that allow women to go to the police and complain and get a court date and like Bill Cosby. That went on a long time ago, but it still was so. So let's not confuse rape and crimes like that, which have their own. For example, battery has a 2-year statute. Most people aren't going to bring a criminal action for battery, but you can. Or let me rephrase that: a tort for battery.
A tort.
In other words, a tort is something. If I don't like what you do and whatever it is illegal, I can sue you for having committed a tort. Okay. But right now, I'm not really talking about torts. I'm talking about the equal protection laws that we have, both at the state and the federal level, that allow you to complain about a violation of equal rights.
Discrimination.
Yes.
So I guess I said crime, and I'm not being an attorney.
It's okay.
I'll throw out these words. It's a crime.
Yeah, it is in a moral sense.
But it's not legally a crime.
No.
But you can take someone.
Sometimes it is.
Can you file a case against someone who is discriminated? But in the workplace, you can. Right?
First, you file a complaint with the agency, and then they have a right to investigate it. And then they say either, okay, you're right, we'll take action ourselves, or they say, now we'll give you a right to go to court. And then you have a right. Then you go to.
Then you have the power to go and go to
exactly
court.
Right. That's
okay.
Right.
So by the action itself, it doesn't mean you definitely have the right to go to court, but you should go through the process.
You have to, and you have to do it within the statutes of limitations.
Within
it's too late. I mean,
yeah. And so for sexual assault or sexual discrimination, what's it right now?
Sex discrimination is
you need to file within
illegal under both Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act in the United States. It's also illegal in California and illegal in other states as well. Not all of them. Not all of them have their own. But
and what's the statute to file?
108, six months in federal.
Wow, not even a year?
No. If you're filing with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission under Title VII, you have 180 days from the date of
Why
the
such a short period of time?
That's the way the legislation was drafted.
Oh my goodness!
It could obviously be amended or changed or revised, but in this Congress, I mean, good luck with getting something like that through.
My goodness, I don't understand why that's so short.
It has to be amended, yes.
So people have to take action literally the moment that
right. Well,
it's happened.
Within 6 months at the latest.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a case involving 2 women Marines who were very badly sexually harassed. I mean, it was just horrible what this man did, sending pictures of himself, and I don't even want to use the words that are. It was just disgusting, and it took them each of them in separate ways, but same man, about 2 years to get their courage together to complain. By that time, it was too late to complain about that. But what happened was that the commander in their chain in the Marines retaliated against them for complaining. That's a separate offense that you can then complain about. So they now have their complaints filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So and with the agency itself, which is complicated in the federal government.
I got it.
But still,
it allowed them to continue because something else happened.
That's correct. That's right.
Right.
And
Which had a longer statute.
I got those cases because Time's Up referred them to me.
Oh, nice.
So I'm just saying
that's great.
It's gotten to be pretty.
Yeah, I'm sure with this Time's Up movement, they're hearing from so many people.
They are. They said several thousand in the New York Times. I read today that and the women that I was talking about, I believe, work for McDonald's, and have been very badly sexually harassed, and they made it under the statute. So that case is going forward.
Oh, that's great. And the Time's Up movement was raising money to help.
Yes, quite a lot of money. I think they've got
pay legal fees for.
That's correct.
Yeah,
they are paying very, very handsome legal fees, but it's a little bit.
They help It does. It help them. Help everybody a little bit.
It helps with the expenses of going to court. It's a very expensive process.
Yeah. So sure.
Yes.
The city wants their money. They charge for every time you walk in that courtroom,
that's right?
right?
That's and it's not. It's a state. And
it's a state.
It's all of them. Just file a complaint.
Wow. Okay. So back to what I was saying is some of the warning signs. I use the word crime. Let's take that out. But what signs at the workplace? Let's focus on that for a moment. Would someone look to consider, because it's so accepted? You really. Sometimes they're blinded by it. It doesn't feel right, but you don't realize that this really is something that you can file a case on. What are some of those things that can happen in a workplace?
Well, I mean, a
few.
You have taunting, you have touching, staring and making you very uncomfortable. Let me be very clear about this. There are two kinds of sexual harassment to keep in mind. One is called quid pro quo, and that's like, let's say, Harvey Weinstein saying to somebody, "I'll get you a good role in this movie if you sleep with me." Okay, that's quid. You sleep
kind
for
of a
the
blackmail
role.
in a way.
Exactly. Okay, quid pro. All right. Then you have hostile work environment, which is actually my favorite one because it's so much more prevalent. When I say favorite, I mean it's horrible and it happens very frequently. Which is a workplace that is hostile. Feel very, very uncomfortable feeling as a woman to be in a particular workplace, either because the boss is terrible about women or co-workers are, or supervisors are. And all of that is considered hostile work environment. It's a violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. It's a form of sexual harassment that's illegal as sex discrimination, as well as sexual harassment. So that's something that women should keep in mind because it's very prevalent. A lot of women feel a lot of workplaces are not easy to be in, and that's what they have to fix.
So if someone's talking to you in a way that they feel is inappropriate or making you uncomfortable, that also would warrant, or is that
you have to be careful if it's just a person having a conversation with you. But one person, it's the way it's considered is continuous and or pervasive. That if the activity is either continuous or pervasive, does not have to be both, then that's enough. So if one horrible man is treating you really badly as a woman, that's pervasive enough for you to make a claim. Obviously, if it continues for 2 years, that's also if it's not as bad, but it's just the sense of how you define these words.
Right, and I guess you have to speak up too and let the person know that I don't want you talking to me that way, or
that's right.
You can't just take it all the time. You should also speak up.
The person who is being harassed should definitely take as much reasonable measure as she can of what's going on and complain to the appropriate person. It may be not be the person who's doing it. It may be the supervisor.
The supervisor.
And then if there are places of employment that have more than 50 employees, the employer has to have harassment training courses every 2 years.
Okay, so is that a new?
Yes, and it's
exactly. So for all companies, all businesses over 50 employees now have to have
employees, interns, contractors, part-time workers, as long as there are more than 50 people involved.
Okay, so they have to have that training, and this has come out of the Me Too movement,
or
it's a little bit before that.
Yeah.
But because the wave of issues
but
have been around.
It helps to know when you're in a big workplace that you really do have, and then the employers have to, when I say training, I should have said that they have to train their supervisors as well, and the supervisors have to, so
where it starts. They're the ones that
and yes, and the harassment and discrimination is both by coworkers and supervisors and employers, not just the person at the top.
Right. So is there a difference, I guess, if it's your employer who's committing the offense versus?
Oh, sure, but coworkers, they still have an obligation to make their coworkers behave.
Right.
So you need. I think it's fair to say that you need a lawyer who knows this to be able to discern if what you're talking about is worth proceeding with.
Right.
But it's very important for people to.
So is that if someone is watching and they feel uncomfortable at work, or maybe they went to Starbucks, well, let me not call it a coffee shop or business, and they feel that they're regular there and they continue to feel harassed by an employee there, that's another level, I guess.
Absolutely, but they have to say something. they should tell the employer or somebody else,
okay.
and then if it doesn't stop, then they really are sitting there ready to go take action.
Okay, so don't continue to receive it and then finally call their attorney one day and say, "Hey, I keep going. This is happening."
Yeah, no. And look, it really, we're talking about employees. We're not talking about regular people going to a Starbucks or wherever you're
to a business on a daily or a movie theater.
That's a whole other issue of what do people who go places have a right to do. Right now, we're talking about employees.
Okay.
I remember when I was in New York, I used to work at the William Morris Agency, and I had to get from the bus to my office, and there was a construction site, and the screaming and shouting from the top of the building was just horrible, and every woman knows about that. Yeah. There's nothing secret about that.
Yeah, the things that are yelled out at you when you're just minding your business, walking.
Now, I don't think there was too much I could have done about that, because I wasn't an employee, and I was walking down the street, but,
if it get to that point, I mean, like other laws are in place as we're out and about in our day that you can't do. Why not that? I mean, we're more concerned about second, third-hand smoke in the street. But
I hate that too.
So someone could walk past you with a cigarette, and that's not right in certain areas. But they can go by and call you all kind of inappropriate names.
That's exactly right.
You
and
can't
that's
do
why
anything.
Women have to just get it together to start complaining about it.
Yeah, we have to work hard to get it to that point, because to me that's just as toxic, the discrimination of sexual discrimination and the verbal abuse, as it is a cigarette.
You have to be a little bit careful about using the
abuse.
Word. No. I'm not talking about. No, I mean the word discrimination.
Okay.
Because there are laws against bullying. So if you're not an employee, then there are other ways that you can take action to stop something that's bothering you. And I'm not an expert in bullying, but I'm just saying that
so it might fall under bullying a little bit.
It might be illegal in some other, because people live in. I assume that your viewers are watching from different states as well as from California and countries. I can't even begin to. I mean, I think it's fabulous.
We're a worldly, a global show.
It's fabulous. I'd love to know. I mean, if somebody wanted to tell me what the situation, for example, in England is, I'd love to know about it.
Yeah, if anybody there watching has a situation, want to gently make comment about it and get into more detail privately, you know how we go. Put a comment, inbox me. I'll put you in touch as well.
Interesting. It's very
so, yeah.
I mean, if I can be of any help with anybody, I can give you my email address and we can see if there's anything I can do. Should I say it off, or do you want to do it?
It's up to you if you want it to be. Is it a public email?
My email is public.
Okay, if it's public, you can say it.
It's bfeigen@feigenlaw.com.
And it's Feigen.
B as in Brenda, Feigen @feigenlaw.com.
And your website, since we're going, is www.feigenlaw.com.
That's right.
That's okay.
Which is never up to date. Never.
Oh, we all have websites that need. You have to update a website like every other month.
It seems like. I don't know. Every other year, I don't even do that. I wanted to put a link into this RBG movie because it's so good, and people really, if they want to be informed about any of this, that's to watch at the hands of the. Let me just say this: when I got to the ACLU. Then Professor Ginsburg and I wrote a brief in the Frontiero case, the Air Force case that I was mentioning.
Right. Yeah.
And we went to the Supreme Court for the oral argument, where she had been granted 12 minutes to make her argument out of the 30 that was allotted to the plaintiffs.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was the most extraordinary. I sat there with all these law books in front of me with all of the citations and all of the footnotes and everything that she would need.
Oh, wow.
But she spoke so eloquently, and the 9 justices were just staring at her in awe. And she never needed a footnote or a citation, and she went through those 12 minutes brilliantly. And we talk about that in the documentary RBG. That it was really just brilliant, and that was the beginning of all of the sex discrimination law that we really have.
Wow!
I mean, all of it.
Sounds like she really made a difference for other people who have cases.
The first case, actually, she didn't argue the case, but the very first case. In this country of sex discrimination in the Supreme Court that won, where women won, was Reed against Reed, which involved a teenage son whose parents had gotten divorced and who had been disputing custody. Very unfortunately, the son killed himself. And the parents were fighting over who had the right to administer his estate, which consisted of a guitar and something. And fathers were always preferred over mothers for administering the estates of their children. And Mrs. Reed brought a lawsuit and ended up winning in the Supreme Court. That was irrational sex discrimination and not justified. So that was the beginning. And Ruth wrote a brief in that case, and then Justice Ginsburg now, and then we proceeded forward.
That's amazing. It takes one really big case.
That's right.
To start that wave going.
Right. I think that's right.
And then people finally latch on. Is that how it works? Like you wait as an attorney, certain cases you want a big case to win.
Oh, sure.
Because that'll help what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Goodness, it's just sad if we can go back in history and see so many situations that now we just wouldn't even imagine today happening.
It's very hard to imagine.
And we have a long way still to go.
That's so
we
true.
Really do. So good. I want people to be able to call you if they have any of these situations, because you don't want to let it go. Again, time is short on this statute. Is it easier now, though, to prosecute in these situations of the one that we can prosecute against? I'm getting all these terms all mixed up now. In sexual assault. Is that one? Do you think that's easier now? Is that?
Yes, in a way, the words are blurry because if we really mean that, then assault isn't the same thing as battery, and it really means screaming out something and scaring somebody, right? That's an assault. But
you could just slap somebody and it'd be an assault, right?
Well, if it's done in a particular way. But that, I'm not an expert in criminal law, and I can't really tell you exactly what all of the different statutes are. But if somebody feels that a crime has been committed, then they go to the police, and that's where it gets resolved. If, however, you want to sue somebody for damages for what he has done to you, then you are talking about a tort, a person-to-person action, or you're talking about discrimination, in which case you're using these statutes that I've been talking about to lay out the framework of how you go forward with this case.
I see.
And my specialty is more in discrimination than it is in physical, including sexual assault, because that's so much rarer. I mean, you don't really see very many of those cases. First of all, because you have to figure out how much it's going to cost to go forward, as I keep saying.
Right.
And is it worth it just to go to court to bring a lawsuit against somebody? What you're really doing is want to rely on the law that we have to make a dent as far as society is concerned about what's discrimination.
Do you feel that these marches are helpful?
Oh gosh, yes. First of all, I went to the 2016, the march, and right after this horrible creature was elected or took office, and
you went to the one here in LA?
I did. I went to the one here in LA.
I was there.
It was fantastic.
I went down.
Wasn't it fabulous? I mean,
it
with
was.
all of those women, I couldn't even move when we got off the out of the car.
That was the first time I saw the pink hat.
Oh, it was wonderful. Somebody actually gave me her pink hat.
Oh, nice.
It was just wonderful, and I think that I want to say this about that march, that it made me completely agree with myself that the focus is on women as opposed to all of the different factions, that all of this intersectionality is extremely important, but all of it was feminist.
Right.
Whether they were black women or Hispanic or American Indian, whatever they were, it was every single group, every kind of LGBTQ and everything. And it was not about distinguishing each of ourselves into our special subgroups, but rather coming together as women, and that's what I think. There were men there in support.
It was nice. There were some men there, but it was definitely an overwhelming number of women.
And I have a book upstairs I would have brought called "Why I March," and it shows pictures from all over the world.
Oh,
England, London, everywhere, all over every continent had people marching in that, and it was just amazingly.
Yeah, the news
exciting.
Cutaway was so beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
All the different countries around the world, and of course DC was
absolutely.
Huge. Overwhelming.
I think we were bigger than DC. I think we had 750,000, as I understand.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, and I think they were at 500, maybe 600,000.
That's the power of Los Angeles. We bring them out.
Sure do.
And some people are like, "Do they work? When are they marching?" And I'm like, "What?" It's creating a voice. It's taking a stance. It's showing for someone to take that time.
That's right.
And to go down there in the crowd and spend their day, that means they're very concerned about the issue and they want change.
Concerned. I mean, really,
they want to see change. And that wasn't everybody. A lot of people stayed home.
A lot of people said, I can't go. It's January 21st and it's cold out or something. Which
it was cold. It
wasn't as cold as,
the next one was even cold.
Yeah, I know.
The next one was colder. The one I think it was the early this year. But no, to go out there in the midst of all that, of course, I would say, these marches make a difference.
Oh, they do. They so do.
And I think it definitely let DC know, the White House know, how important. Not that it's changing everything yet, but in time it'll take longer. But I think it made a difference.
Yeah,
but
I know it
congressional leaders,
that's right.
Congressional leaders see it and they know.
They saw it and they heard it, and I think that they all know. Now women are assuming office around the country and running. I mean, I ran when I was a lot younger. I ran for state senate in Manhattan.
Okay.
And I was up against a guy who had a huge number of dollars in his pocket, and I lost narrowly in the Democratic primary, but nobody cared about women running in those days. Now it's sort of really.
Would you do it again?
No, not now. But I would encourage other women to do it.
Yeah, it's so important, and that I was going to get to that point that I think the marches did encourage more women to go into political office, and that's what we need. That's how you make change.
That's exactly
you get inside, get on the inside,
and then as you said, we did it the next year, a year to the day, and it was another huge march.
Oh yeah, and I didn't know when I heard it was coming. I thought really, I thought it was good, but I was. Really, is there, and I could not believe the amount of people that went down there.
That's exactly right.
I said, okay, 2 years in a row, this definitely lets us know.
And I love that, as I said before, the people from all over the world were not only watching, but they were marching themselves. I mean, in Anchorage, and this is my time.
Yeah. For a man who's, we have, of course, female viewers, but some men they think too, they're talking about the time's up, and they kind of feel like that's a woman conversation. It's very much a men's conversation because they need to know what actions that they're doing that they may not it may be an honest error on their part in how they say things, how they're raised, what was customary.
Yeah. But speaking of how they're raised, they have sons, and the sons have to learn how to be in society.
Well, and if they're taught right, but that's how it stops.
That's right.
And if you're not teaching them, and if you yourself don't realize that a change needs to take place, or there is something wrong with that way of being. What would you say to men that are watching that can help? Some of the.
I mean, to go on the same theme I was just on with sons, daughters. I mean, how do you want your daughters to be treated? How do you want your wives and girlfriends and relatives of every kind? I mean, it's what kind of society do you want to live in? Do you really want to live in a society full of Harvey Weinsteins? And I don't think you do. So or Bill Cosby's, people, drugging women with their drinks. I mean, it's not where we. I have two grandsons, one 6 and one 9, and they are so alert to this. I mean, the 9-year-old was just saying today how sad he is that Hillary lost and that Trump won, and he's a very smart little boy. But
at 9 years old,
yeah. I mean, they really do. They get that this is a bad situation that we're in.
And it's sad. I've thought about that too, that children today are so engaged and involved in this political system. So from one standpoint, I think it's good. But from another, you should be off playing, doing other things, and feeling safe and be happy.
I know, and safe is a whole other thing.
Safe and happy with the world, and be able to go to school and have these, and to carry that on their shoulders on top of.
I know.
It's sad. Yeah, it is sad for the children. So. But it is good that they're being smart, and maybe they'll go into office as a result. It's motivating them to do something and realize, hey, we can do something. We don't have to accept this. So that's so. You might have two little future Congress leaders coming.
You never know. Never ever.
That's great. Well, this has been fun. Is there anything else you think I haven't touched on that can be?
I think we've touched on a lot.
I think you've been so.
I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't think we need to. I think the point is simple, and I don't want to muddy it up with too many issues. I think it's important just to consider what we're talking about now.
Yeah. What final statement would you say to kind of wrap the whole point of what you do and how it can make a difference, and how we can give people little information so they can take some kind of action?
I think that the biggest problem is people's lack of attention to some of this. I mean, a lot of people just think they can go home from work and stick themselves in front of a television show and stay there all night long and completely ignore society. And I hate to be beating a drum here, but if people don't vote, they really don't deserve to live in a society that we should have. And that's so, I mean, I think voting right now has got to be on the top of the list. I mean, we're working on a project that involves celebrating the centennial of women's getting the vote in 1920. For 2020, and it's a sacred right, and people just do not use it, and that's, I mean,
I know. And we have elections coming up. We're voting for governor and many other things, laws. It's so important. If you're traveling, do a ballot.
Yeah, exactly.
Send in your mail-in ballot. Yeah, because it really is important. Right. So important. Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing and taking this time.
I'm glad.
Welcoming me here up in this beautiful day.
No, it is a beautiful day.
The sun is shining. It's a gorgeous day in Los Angeles. I know we have people from Trinidad and Tobago, from London, as I mentioned, Australia, Michigan, New York, definitely many in Los Angeles area, and many others. If I haven't named your city, and my apologies, but I know you're watching, and I appreciate your views of the show. And please share the link. I think this information that was shared today by Brenda would be very helpful too many people and help them. Maybe you would have saved them on the deadline.
That would be very,
you know,
yeah,
people need to realize.
Right.
I had no idea it was that short a deadline.
It is
for the statue there. So
yeah.
Thank you again for watching Karla Dawn Live. I'm Karla Gordy Bristol. Go to my website to see all the past shows, also my and my Beverly Hills View shows at www.karlagordybristol.com. And we gave the website and information to contact. Please do reach out if you need any help or you have a friend that may need the services here of Brenda. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I'll see you next week, 5:30 Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time. Please make someone smile today. It makes a world of difference in their life. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.